Yeah, it's running. And we are with 31, 32 now. Okay, still a few people coming in.
Yeah. So hello everyone, we are just gonna wait for a few minutes for the last participants to join and we will start this session, okay?
So Peter, you can do another dance move.
Well, what we were just talking about was the that we need a playroom in one of the breakouts. So I think if the next time you create rooms, Stefan, perhaps you could have a playroom. And the idea is that we think of ways to build structures. So get toothpicks and marshmallows, or toothpicks and gummy sweets, or your construction kits. And I think, you know, talking about the physicality of an icosahedron and why it's used is an important topic that we could explore more by doing the physical experience, which is what I found fascinating at the Meta Forum in November last year. No, the year before last now, in Holland, where Joe Truss ran a whole day-long seminar on building and the importance of these structures in our understanding of reality at all levels, from quantum through cosmological expansion. And I find this topic to be quite fascinating now, as we think about structure and relation and organization. So I think over the course of the period, if we could do some playing with structures, it would be a helpful point.
Peter,
if you've got your favorite kit, it would be good to bring it forward.
Peter, do you think you could find that talk you're referring to from the Netherlands and provide a link to it for the rest of us? I'd like to listen to it. I think there are recordings of all the talks, aren't there?
Well, that's a good question.
There are recordings. We can check in on that actually later, Mark. If you're interested, let's discuss. Yeah.
There are not all the recordings, but there are some of the recordings that we can make available. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. It's about the Meta Forum ones. Oh, sorry. I got confused. Yeah.
Well, there's Meta Forum, and then there was the video recording of the Joe Truss session, which you did some of that, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yes. Also the one after. Yeah.
Are you?
The one in the Netherlands, we do have the recordings. Mark Lamberts produced a video that is available in I think it's in the webpage, but we can double check and make it available. Yeah.
There's also the Humanity Rising session Joe did as well, of course.
Yep, lots of material.
One other thing with the icosahedron, however you say it, Angela John Taborda did some really nice work of creating these sort of like flat versions of it with some software. I don't know if perhaps Luis or Maria Jose could gain access to those. I'm not sure that I have them. I can have a look for them, but they're really pretty in terms of giving you this feeling of how the fives kind of step across to each other. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, of course, yes. But I think that we can come back to that topic perhaps in the curiosity.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Briefly,
we were with 35 people now. I think for the sake of honoring for people that do come up and show up in time, that we start.
Yeah, let's go. Let's start.
Could I just respond to Peter? We just had an open question. I've got the link on chat, so you can construct an icosahedron, but you can't share it on that link.
Great.
Okay. Right. So, well, first of all, I hope that you have had a little bit of fun producing your statements of importance and moving them around and beginning to talk to other people. We are quite happy with the proposals. I think that there is a very rich content in Miro. So I'm going to explain how are we going to do the rest of the game today, how we're going to manage the agenda today. So just give me a second. I'll put just give me a second. So the way that we are going to be working today, okay, let me start from the beginning. So we're going to start by reviewing a little bit the process of pre-clustering that all of you have been doing for the last 20 hours. When we first visited the Miro board today, a few hours ago in the organizing team, we noticed, first of all, that people haven't been very brave in terms of doing the pre-clustering. And then we realized that, I mean, it is actually, you really need to move aside to sort of spread out a little bit the post-its, because otherwise it becomes very, very, very difficult to see. So we decided to help the exercise, and we needed to do a bit more of moderation that we have planned in our original design. And given the constraints on time in this afternoon, so we decided to push forward a little bit more of the clustering. So we'll be working with the participants in the last few hours. And in this moment, we have already a clustering that is very close to the 18 clusters that we aimed to have at this stage, which makes it easier, the game in this moment, because it means that we don't need to do the first voting that we were planning to do. So we have decided to clarify and make it easier, the protocol in this next hour. And I will explain what we did. First of all, I mean, some people draw very large boxes and others did very small boxes. So we try to make them more similar to each other. Some people wrote very long statements. So we try to talk to some of these people if we manage to communicate, and basically ask them to shorter statements so that we could have more balanced statements between all of us. And we did some people draw connections between the different statements, so that made it a little bit difficult, because I mean it becomes very messy when we have all sorts of connections going from one point to the other, and it's always possible to make connections. So we decided to just delete the connections. We have announced in chat all these decisions that we've been making during the last few hours. So that's what we've done. So in this,
Angela, maybe a quick suggestion: the view you're sharing of PowerPoint is not you making good use of the screen. Perhaps you can stop this presentation mode and just show the slides as if you are editing them. Then we see a bit more, because this is the presentation mode. Yes, like this. I think
okay,
that's
right,
a bit
okay.
better. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So so that was this aspect, and then this stage is to select, where our intention was to select the 18 aggregated statements of importance. So what we have done was to sort of identify the emerging 18 that were more clear, to clean up the mirror screen to display more clearly this emerging 18. We still have some unlinked statement of importance that look quite isolated. And the work we want to do with all of you in this moment is to define collectively working titles for these emerging clusters. Yeah. Once we have decided the working titles, we are going to go to the 18 Zoom breakout meeting rooms. And that will be the exercise for today. So the first hour will be just working together in Miro to try to identify the working teams, the working titles, and then we are gonna go and separate into the breakout rooms, into the 18 breakout rooms. In order to do the first session, Stefan is going to moderate the first session, and the idea is that synchronously, all together, we will visit the Miro page, and we will ask you, first of all, to see the final landscape as it is at the moment, to make sure that your statement of importance landed on a coherent grouping. If not, rather than moving them, well, talk about it, in discuss if you will prefer them in somewhere different. because this can become very complex, we will identify tensions, but not necessarily we will be able to resolve all the tensions, but at least we will take note, and then we will find out how to resolve them. Yeah. So the idea is, when you do this first activity of looking around, if you have more than 2 of your statements of importance in one of these pre-clusters, and or if you feel very passionate about a particular cluster or grouping, then you can write down a working title, suggest a working title for this cluster, okay? And Stefan will moderate the group work for naming the clusters, okay? So that's the first thing that we're gonna be doing in the next hour. After that, we will have a break, 10 minutes break very likely. Stefan is putting on his moderator hat. So after that, we will have a pre-exadic reduction. We will go to the first 9 sub-meetings today, from maybe earlier, because we have shrink a little bit the agenda to make it manageable. So we may end up ending a little bit earlier today. The idea is to do these 9 Zoom meetings. And in this meeting, we will have 15 minutes for each meeting and a 5 minutes changeover. The idea is to clarify and agree the title and produce the aggregated statement of importance. So we are going to consolidate the different isolated statements into a sentence or a couple of sentences in a more coherent way. And we're going to develop in each group more consistently, yeah, the content and the meaning of the conversation. So that's what we are going to be doing from 6 to 7 or a little bit earlier. We will have facilitators in place in each one of the Zoom meetings, and you will be free to move from one room to the other in the order that you want and as many times as you wish. You don't need to stay for the 15 minutes if you are not engaged. You can jump into another room, or if you are engaged in the conversation, you can stay for the full of the 15 minutes. So it's up to you. You are free to move from one to the other. We have designed it in 3 simultaneous rooms, just to make sure that all the participants have the opportunity to expose themselves to as much as possible of the topics, so that later on you will have a more clear decision on which ones would you prefer to participate on, because tomorrow we'll do the voting. Tomorrow will be the only voting that will be intended to reduce the variety from 18 clusters to 12, the final clusters, and to produce the consolidated statement of importance. Yeah. And that will be the end of this week activity tomorrow when we do that. For today's Zoom meetings, we have organized the rooms in this way. The time is still stick to the original plan. As I said before, we may be able to do it to start a little bit earlier. If that's the case, we'll just update this and let you know. But it will be 15 minutes meetings. So we'll have in each of the breakout rooms one of the facilitators. Here is the list of facilitators that will be there. And when you have decided on the titles, we will update this room and we will publish in the chat or somewhere else the titles and the rooms, so that you will all know where are you going for the discussions in the next session, all right? So you will have a map on how to go to the sessions and what is going to be discussed in the sessions when we finish this next hour. The roles for the participators is to engage in conversation to clarify the cluster's title and topic. And for the facilitators, to do timekeeping, take notes, check progress, ensure the new title and the consolidated, in this case, aggregated statements of importance are produced on time, and update them into Miro. So we will have another section of Miro in which we will draw the resulting aggregated statements of importance from the 18 groups. And on the basis of this, tomorrow, when we finish the second 9 Zoom meetings, we will do the voting to decide collectively on the 12 final consolidated statement of importance. Yeah. When you are not engaged in a conversation, you can go to another of the rooms, you can stay, you can leave freely as you wish. So you are free to decide your own agenda both today and tomorrow. Okay. Tomorrow will be the second 3 meetings. And basically, no, today we will have a first round and then a second round, and we will be closing the latest at 7 p.m. today. You have this is what we explained today. This is again the organizing team, but basically today we are all playing. We are all support, and we are all available for you. I put the whole names that someone yesterday, Martin, I think, was wanting to have the full names, so they're here. Okay, and that's all for me, Stefan. I don't know. You want to carry on?
If you stop the screen share, then we see everybody. Yeah, maybe we can take a couple, an urgent question, let's say, based on what you just said. Is there any urgent question that you feel like that needs addressing right now that might be an impediment for further progress? I see Catherine raised her hand.
I just have a wee question at the minute. So if one of our statements of importance is free floating at the moment, but we feel it should be in one of the categories or one of the groups, are we able to make that comment before the group start discussing the content?
Yes, of course. That's the purpose of this session, is precisely to make sure that.
Okay, so we do that next. I'm sorry, then I'd be quiet. Thank you.
Yeah. The thing is, though, that we may be in a bit of a time squeeze to accommodate all remarks, right? So we have to really balance moving on and taking care of making sure that everything falls into place. So let's balance that together, and I'll try my best to provide some guidance and keeping time on that. Okay. Any other urgent questions? Otherwise, I propose we move ahead. Go along.
I asked in the chat where are the links to the breakout rooms, so they should be down at the bottom of the screen. There's 4 boxes.
Breakout rooms are currently closed, and we will not use them at this stage. We will now first have a collective survey of all the groupings that are made. Right. And get a good impression of what's there, what are the working titles that are currently there. And after that part, we will open up the breakout rooms. And as Angela said, it's scheduled for 6 GMT, UK time. Then we will have slots of 15 minutes of parallel breakout rooms, but only then will the rooms be open.
Are we working through a chair now, or how do we come into discussion?
I'm not sure. I couldn't quite hear your question. Could you repeat?
Are we working through a chair? How do we come into discussion now?
What I will be doing for the next hour and 15 minutes is I will be guiding us. I will share the Miro board on screen, and we'll have a collective look at what's there. And based on that, we can have a discussion, plenary. And then based on that, we can come up with some provisional working titles for each of those groupings that have been made. And based on that, we will then have parallel discussions in breakout rooms.
Yes, for the plenary discussion, I'm asking how you come into discussion. Do you stick a hand up? Are you going to chair? How does that work?
Right. Okay. Well, let's try. Since our group is not too big, we can try. Let's try to have a bit of. I know this term, ether discipline. So we can mute and unmute ourselves if we feel like it's fitting to make a comment. Let's see if we can balance that together. If that becomes too chaotic, then we may need to resort to hand raising. Let's see how that plays out. There's not a very strict rule in that, but if it becomes too chaotic, we may want to use the raise hand tool. And indeed, as Dai suggests in the chat, we also have the chat. So if we monitor that together and make a remark when fitting, let's try to balance it in that way. And assuming that we can take a bit of shared responsibility in that. Let's see how that plays out. So with that, I'd like to move on and share this Miro screen here so that we can have a collective impression of what we've generated. And it's quite nice to see, I think. I think in total there is roughly 130, maybe 140 stickies that have been generated. And over the course of the day today, we've made an attempt in trying to group them somewhat based on topic, affinity, somewhat intuitively not through very strict rules or anything, but with all good intent and with a couple of people. We've been debating a few things. And what I'd like to do now is just visit what's here. You can see that from this overview, each of the groups has a sort of sketchy border in blue, yeah, with a couple of sketchy lines that is suggesting a cluster already. And with that, we have one text box, which is prefixed by WT, which stands for working title. And there's a number. So what we'll do next is we will visit each of these groupings with their working titles in the order of the numbering. And we'll just have an impression of what's there. We can observe it together and just have a brief debate about that working title. Maybe it requires a bit of an update. If that it would be so, if there's a clear proposal, then Maya will take note of that and she will update the working title of that before we move that to the breakout rooms.
That's Andrea.
I'm sorry, I wasn't, okay,
Yeah,
that's fine. I think
each of us. Oh,
yeah, the both
any of us.
Okay, you were balancing that together, right? So,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Right, so with that, I want to go to the first one, and we actually go to this one for a reason. It's about it's a provisional title, right? A working title. Right now, it's the Metaphorum organism, it says here. And the reason we start here as number one, I will zoom out for that just once more. To make that point, is that the reason for that is, I'll just briefly revisit the opening question, is that the opening question is indeed focusing on how can Metaphorum and its members capture the learning from the current crisis and best contribute in radical shifts that society has to make quickly. So because of that statement, we decided to make this group at the bottom here the first to focus on. The Metaphorum organism, it's called now. Oh, my screen's acting up a little. Okay, let's see if I can blow it up. There we go. I'll move that one a bit there. So what we want to watch out here for is, there's quite a bit of information here. We could, of course, have a debate whether or not it's one group or two groups, but let's just have a read and see what's there.
I'm afraid the dark green is the font's too small.
Yeah.
So for the sake of legibility, I just enlarge the sticky then a bit more.
Can we get clarification of words as we're reading? I really...
Yeah, please go ahead, Peter. Yeah, what's on your mind?
Metaphorum must gain momentum by docking on.
It's me. It's maybe bad English. Sorry for my English. It's like when you land with an airplane, you go to a gate and connect. That's what I'm trying to say here.
So it's just basically making a connection to, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But maybe a little bit more than just knowing somebody. It's a really productive connection. Which
establishing couplings.
Yeah, maybe.
Docking with, I think.
I'm a sailor. I thought it came from sailing, this terminology.
Yeah.
Like flying.
No, it certainly does. Certainly does.
Okay.
But I think people think of it in a very physical sense, not in a sort of a social, relational sense. So you have to anthropomorphize the boat for it to work. Would coupling work for you, Jens?
Coupling, yes, definitely.
So must gain momentum by coupling with suitable, equally purpose-driven communities.
Yeah, That's a very nice formulation.
So is there perhaps a proposal based on the based on what we are observing here? Is there any need to perhaps update the working title that we have currently? Of course, it will be updated based on the discussion that we'll take on a bit later, but maybe there's already a suggestion for improvement.
Yeah, in this moment, more than agreeing on the final title, what we want is for everyone to familiarize with this working title so that when we do the next discussions, people know where to go. Yeah?
Yes, exactly.
Break room to go. But it is in the break room discussions, those who go to that room, the ones who are entitled to change the topic and to produce a first aggregated statement of importance.
Can I just ask a methodology question?
Yes.
I'm also not sure if I have contributed in a good way, because I thought that the statements of importance should be, a statement, not a question. And here I'm the only one who has not put a question. So is it completely wrong, or
No, it's
did I
not.
get?
I don't think so.
No, the idea, not necessarily it has to be a question. So some people interpreted it like a question, but not necessarily it needs to be a question. The important thing is that it's a provocative statement that makes you think and that invites an interesting conversation. Yeah.
Okay. I think now, since there are no immediate responses to the idea for improvement, there is?
I have one. I've read all the post-its, the statements of importance about. And to me, it doesn't relate to organism. It relates to how Metaforum connects with the world and influences it. It's about that.
I was going to suggest preparing the Metaforum organism, because it is, most of the post-it notes relate to how to respond to the opening challenge by assessing the Metaforum organism and preparing it better for the task.
I think we're getting into the breakout room sessions, aren't we? But I suggested in the chat, it feels like the Metaforum strategy around the theme.
Well, the reason I was saying connecting is because it's got stakeholders, it's got connecting, it's got influencers, community, it's got all that stuff in it.
But it comes down to what you think is an organism. So if an organism doesn't exist without its relationship with its exteriority, then the relations are part of the definition of the identity of the organism, and it's going about being.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think organism's good.
Yeah, so okay, from a moderation standpoint, I will just note that it's very good that we're now eliciting these diverse interpretations and considerations relating to this group. At this point, we cannot resolve all those ideas. So if there, maybe I would like to suggest, based on the remark, that it is to prevent the misunderstanding that an organism might live outside of a context. Perhaps we can say the Metaforum organism and its living environment, or something of that order.
Or just organization. Or
just a quick question. I mean, from my impression, it's right. It's a good grouping from my perspective, but it's not the organism as such that is in focus, but the capacity of the Metaforum, or capacities as a general term.
Yeah, it's also about maintaining its structural coupling.
How about the Metaforum organism and impact?
Here, I think it's more about capacities. So what do we have? What kind of potentials do we have? What can we tap?
What about the reach of the Metaforum organism?
I like
so,
that.
Combining that, we could have the potential reach of the Metaforum organism and its environment.
Well, that's why I said structural coupling.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maya and Andrea, can you process these remarks into an updated suggestion? Then I'll move our focus to the next grouping. Because of time, we do need to have an impression of each of the groupings that are there. So we'll revisit what you propose there. And of course, again, this can be updated based on the group discussions. For those that decide that this is a relevant topic you want to dive into, then you can also make a proposal for a better cluster title. So here we are at the working title number 2 grouping, and it's now labeled participation. Please have a good look at what we have here.
Can you make it bigger?
Yeah, I'll blow it up a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just make a point of caution? Yeah. Everybody here is not coming from a systems point of view, right? Might be concerned about a crisis. Something needs to be done. And we're using a lot of terms like structural coupling, variety, requisite. They're just a little small thing to help them to understand what is meant. Otherwise, we're going to lose them pretty soon. Might. Yeah. So.
Well, we'll just go into different discussion.
Yeah, actually, there is a group about vocabulary and opening up the systems field more to a wider audience. So perhaps, yeah, actually, Dai makes a remark that he would like to have a look at Miro and the groupings directly. Of course, you are completely at liberty to do that. If that's your preferred mode of exploring the board. The reason we do this in a central facilitated way is just to make sure that everybody's had a shared impression of what's on there. And since there might be, we're sort of anticipating that there might be some discussion about the cluster titles. This is also a reason for a more central guided experience rather than doing this completely distributed.
I look at the second group, I see 2 different topics in it, and some overlap with the first group. So apparently there are a couple of comments that relate to IP copyright issues. This is some distinct, and then we have some comments that relate rather to the first group, like Metaforum in its current form will never make a difference. So that's related to the organization of Metaforum. How do we become part of the Metaforum community local news? That's something we had. I think we had a similar comment in the first grouping. So there are some overlaps. So one part is IP copyright. Probably we can cluster these comments, and then we have some others, and then there are some that overlap with the first group. So I think we need to be more precise in our groupings.
Yes, well, that precision is exactly what we're seeking here, Wolfgang. This, if you have a proposal for that, then that's very welcome.
I admire what you did.
Yeah. Okay, but it's good to. It's good to. Go ahead.
On that basis, is actually Malik a stakeholder with which Metaforum needs a healthy relationship, which puts it back into the first group? So did one of the stakeholders?
I think that's a very good question. Let's say it like that. And the reason I think that these are somewhat in the same corner, obviously, is that they have a relationship, which can be explored, right? We've sort of used the spatial distribution to see, you know, also as groupings, what more or less goes well together. So I think the further disambiguation and clarification is needed, but we're raising some questions here that I hope we all take note of rather than trying to answer everything. So are there more reflections on this particular group?
I've got one. It's Hugh.
Yeah.
It seems to me that a principal distinction being made here is about whether it's an open or closed architecture, starting from a social perspective. So that seems to me that what structures it, rather than sort of vaguer notions of participation. It's about whether it's a sort of a private commercial outfit, or whether you want something open and scalable.
I also think that in this group, the difference with the other group is that this group is more focused in eSyn and is more focused in clarifying IP issues and the possibility of working on a commons, Creative Commons license, and all these ideals that we have, that this integration is part of the purpose is to clarify many of these ideas. So perhaps focusing a little bit more on this,
yes,
not as broad as participation, but something more more related with the eSyn, Metaforum eSyn, and something.
The participation and autonomy.
Well, I'd say the difference between how it is taken up rather than who you're connecting with, or it's how. And so the focus on there was, for example, it seemed to be an emphasis on an open approach, i.e. with respect to intellectual property and ownership and even the architectures of use, I suppose.
Isn't it about the dissemination of eSyn?
Well, that's part of it. I mean, if you've got an open architecture that other people can use, like, for example, in the same way as free software, then it's scalable and gets taken up. So that's part of it. But it's what the architecture allows for.
I just have one more comment before we move away from the WT2.
Okay, go ahead.
Just very briefly, I think that there's a meta question here, or a more general issue, which is the relationship between the entity and its world and its environment. And so there's a tension there that's expressed in this question of being closed or open. So I think to a certain extent these two objects are about the being in the environment and the being that is producing its relationship with the environment. I think it's very difficult to disambiguate those two things because they're relationally iterative. So I think it's good to have them both there, and I think it's dangerous to feel like they have to be tidy.
Okay. So on that note, we move to the next one. Thank you for that.
Can we look at WT3?
Yes, we're going to do that now.
Yeah. Well, I've got three of the stickers in there, mine, Alfredo. And I was thinking of that as that I'm very disillusioned with the way universities function today. To me, they're old-fashioned. They're not looking towards the future, and the way they're organized is very, very into disciplines which are no longer viable. We need to change the structure of universities. We need to change what universities are teaching, a more transdisciplinary. I mean, I've retired now, but when I was at university, I couldn't teach cybernetics or systems thinking because it didn't fit into any faculty, it didn't fit into any discipline. There was no room to teach it. And I think the driving force for new knowledge is universities, and I think we've got to really reorganize them. That was my theory, thinking behind the posters, the stickers. Do people hear that or not?
Yes, I heard it. I could only say I think it's absolutely correct. I think this is one of the major obstacles, that we have a 19th century Euro descendant university knowledge production system that is completely outdated and incapable of executing the basic epistemological work of comprehending the objects of the problem, never mind the solutions.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I mean, I've tried to do research and just found it too restrictive, so I've had to do it independently from universities. But, yeah, so.
Okay. I have a suggestion. Why don't we change the working title to Science and Education? I think because that's really what it is about.
Yeah.
Could we have it Science and Learning?
Well, understanding for me is a very important term. I mean, I didn't write understanding, but understanding means something epistemologically. It means something very different to just knowing, right? That's a whole different means of engagement.
I think we think about knowledge as when you're looking at the COVID response, it's all about going online and how to change from face-to-face to online. But there's still involved this idea that knowledge is a package of something packaged, and we're trying to say, how can we get these packages over to people online rather than face to face? But I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is knowledge is not a package. It's not something you actually transmit. What we're trying to get cybernetically is understanding of the how everything is connected together, and how the observer is part of the observed, all that sort of stuff. It's understanding. Yes. It's not packages of knowledge, which we're trying to, how do we do it better online or offline?
Okay.
It's not the problem.
Okay, thank you. But to resist the temptation to go into the subject very deeply, no, but it's fine. It's good that to see that there is a strong connection to a certain subject. I just want to check with Maya if you're able to process the remarks for an updated working title. Does that work for you?
Yes, it does. I've been following the discussion closely. Thank you.
Okay.
I would just add to that in terms of what I'm hearing from the discussion, the synchronicity or the symphony, and is that there's something here about structure, not just about manifestations. So I think that needs to be in there a bit more. It's about the infrastructure of knowledge production somehow.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, while you work on that, Maya.
Can I just comment on that briefly, in that we're starting to see connection between the elements, and for me, a great believer in activism, your understanding comes from what you do, and I'd agree with the people that have been talking about you can't separate understanding as a separate thing. It's part of what you do, so it becomes part of what the rest of the structure does.
Okay. While Maya is updating that somewhat, it'll be recognizable. And again, it can be updated based on the group discussions that will ensue later. We move to the next grouping here. It's working title 4, and it's now labeled Barriers to Social Change. Please have a look and please respond as you feel fit.
Stefan, it's Ian. Just a quick comment. I'm not sure whether you went through it when you were introducing Miro to everybody, that if I just click on your name at the top of the screen, I automatically follow you.
Yeah.
What you're looking at when I'm looking online on the web at the board.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've covered that or not. Forgive me if you have done.
Oh no, but yeah, you can do that if you want. Yeah, I can highlight it here on my screen. Is at the top right. You have my little image there. So if you're on Miro and you want to follow along my screen, you can actually, that's also a way to follow the screen rather than looking at the screen share. Yeah, if that's helpful. It does give you some more freedom of movement, of course, if you want to have your own path through the board.
Yeah, thanks, Stefan.
Yep.
Just one quick question, Stephen, before we get into WT4. See, we've been discussing these clusters and the possibility of changing the title before we go into the breakout room, but would the numbers remain the same? Would
Yes.
we be able to recognize?
Yes. Now we keep the numbers the same as a coordinative mechanism. Yeah. Good. Okay, John, you ask on the chat, are you audible? You are not to me. I see your mouth moving, but you're not audible. So may want to look into that. Let's see. Any comments on barriers to social change, working title 4?
It's Hugh. I'm just wondering whether that's a little bit too vague a title.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure it is. But then again, yeah, that's why we're engaged with it for the first time, and we will do that again in the upcoming breakouts. But if there's an immediate improvement that you may see, please share.
I think you're right about social dynamics being the emphasis, but there's sort of specific ones. You know, there's ones about I-we distinctions, and then there's others about potentially oppressed groups and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's different tensions at play there.
Couldn't we say barriers to societal change begs the question, really? Perhaps it is more about the need for societal change, or tensions around societal change, or something.
Yeah, tensions around seems to be better than a fixed idea of a barrier, perhaps, right? The tension is more dynamic.
Constraints?
Tensions and constraints related to social change, societal change?
Constraints and enablers? I don't see many enablers, actually. I see constraints.
My sticker was built around the tragedy of the commons, the archetype, the tragedy of the commons, where it's better to cooperate rather than to compete. And I think most people have got the Darwinian opinion that competition is the driver of change, and I think that's wrong. I think cooperation could be the driver for change. That's what I was trying to get to. Maybe that could go into the second, into what 5 then, yeah, I don't know.
Harmonies and tensions describes a working homeostat.
Okay, I've shifted the focus to working title 5.
Stefan?
Yeah.
I've gotten some stuff in the chat about some people being inaudible and had suggested that they put their comments and questions in the chat.
Oh, great. Yeah, if people, you know, if you can point my attention or read them out loud on behalf of that person, that would be helpful, because I may miss comments on the chat. I try to monitor it, but is there anything there right now that needs?
There's a comment from John Waters that at least 2 of the notes in number 5 belong in 4.
Ah, okay.
Probably 3.
Right. Okay. So maybe and John, are those your notes by any chance?
I think they are. I don't know whose notes they are.
One of them is. Okay. Yeah. Which one?
Well, you can find out by looking at the
yeah,
information.
exactly. Yeah, but then this is not really the time to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll give it a quick stab. Maybe this one here. And this one has been commented a lot. Right, looking for a solidarity economy that favors local development, short circuits, and the common good. That is commented on quite frequently. So we may conclude from this that this is maybe not a very good grouping, right? If they belong in some other places, and maybe as a consequence, this could lead to this not making the next evolutionary step, let's say. So let's move on to the next grouping. Which is working title 6, future war scenario.
I don't like the existence of this box, but I think it's an important box to have there, especially considering the history of operational control theory and first order cybernetics and the role that familiarity with the structural dynamics of transformational change plays and has played in the design of domination. So I think it's important to have there. I'm not sure that, I guess one thing I would say is I'm a bit, yeah, I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like that I'm there, but I think it's important.
I would feel more comfortable if it said something like prevention of a future war or something like that.
I would also say I don't think it's about a future war. I think that we are already in the middle of war.
Prevention of conflict.
Well, I'm not sure that.
Yeah, promotion of peace might be another way of reframing it.
Yeah, I think promotion of peace is a bit more. But,
promotion
also,
of harmony.
Harmony, love.
This is why I raised the question of non-violent democracy, partly because I think that democracy has been entering a zone where it uses force, and as is actually a kind of violence, with sort of referenda where, you know, people who lose by a small amount are then discounted from the debate. But I do think that rather than preparing for a decade of war, firming up democracy insofar as it's grounded in non-violence is an important debate.
It should be right at the center of this, I think, and I think we need to put that kind of positive energy forward.
So is there a proposal for an update of the working title?
Well, the title itself is contradicted by one of the stickies. So it says future war scenario, but one of the stickies says we are already in a time of war. So
anyway,
if you consider the present and the future to be distinct, then the title contradicts the sticky.
Why can't we just call it preventing war?
Yeah.
We're already in a time of war is one of the things. So the prevention, you know, if you're talking about closing the barn door after the horse escaped, that may not be an effective strategy at this particular time. I mean, every time anybody has ever tried to implement any kind of change that changes the structures of power, they've been met with terrible violence. I mean, you know, we're all very influenced by Brain of the Firm, but Brain of the Firm ends with every bit of it being crushed through violence. So it's something we have to take into consideration. If we're suggesting change, we have to anticipate what the responses by the dominant system will be to those changes.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. Again, we're not going to resolve those into an updated statement for an updated working title for now, but at least take note of these remarks. Yeah.
For what it's worth, I think that the comment about it being about violence is important, and violence is a difficult thing. It's a tension. Eating is violent.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the moment has passed. I wanted to say something, a few things about 5 and 4, but.
Well, we can very briefly, since you were, you know, for the sake of participation, you were not able to do that properly. So if there's a quick comment you'd like to make here, please go ahead.
Well, yeah, the point about money being the most destructive technology ever, I think belongs in possibly, well, I'd have put it in 4, but it could also fit into 6 because it has a lot to do with both of those things. And it really depends upon, you know, money. What money is really depends upon perspective. You know, the Posywid here. The 3, keeps moving around. I'm feeling seasick.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
The purple, green, and yellow one in 5, I think do belong together, but I think that they probably belong more in 4 than 5. But that one, the one you just moved, it could also have gone into 6 because money is fundamentally a driver of war.
So
just one comment there, John. One of the things that we can do in the next exercise is we can duplicate statements, because there are some statements that are important in more than one cluster. Yeah. So in order not to weaken too much a cluster, like for instance, that cluster on economy is the only one that talks explicitly about the economy. So perhaps in order not to disappear that cluster, that may be an important one, we can duplicate the statements if you consider that will enrich other clusters' conversation. Yeah?
Yeah, I think about topic 6, promotion of harmony and love is much better title than future war scenario. I don't like the mention of war. War is binary, it's plus us and them. I think it's looking for harmony and cooperation is more important.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, so we've made a first order update there. That's good. Let's move to working title 7, eSyn and Syntegration.
Well, I think this is a good topic. I mean, I've tried to do integration for the last 10 years, and the problem's always been that people try and get the time off work for 3 days. Whereas our experiment now to try and spread it over a week online is a fantastic experiment. And I think if it works, this will help the promulgation of integration to end. I think maybe this is the way that integration can go. The way we're doing it.
I do sense in that your remark, Alfonso, that there's a certain anticipation about the future of this. Where is this going, right? Also beyond this experiment, also taking note of the movement aspect there. So maybe eSyn and integration as a static title doesn't reflect that anticipation about what this might become. It's a bit missing in that title currently, but perhaps this is more about that, right? What can this turn into?I'm thinking out loud here. Yeah.
But perhaps that dimension of it is I mean, it's related to the education and understanding one, but with a specific focus on the dynamics of taking up eSyn.
Yeah.
But commenting on Alfredo's sorry if I got the name wrong. Point.
Alfredo, yeah, it's Alfredo, yeah.
Alfredo, yeah. Yes, I mean, you could perhaps exaggerate that point further and just think about technology enabling a reflective process that can take place concurrently, but over a much larger period of time. That can be, so you don't require intensive bursts of, days on end or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's a reflective process is the important thing, which was, and the very few instances of where students or people can actually engage in reflective work, and integration is one of them. That's why I was trying to emphasize integration. I believe in very, very much as a tool or a vehicle for people to engage in reflection.
Yes.
And this has got to be encouraged.
Yes.
There's two distinctive characteristics of eSyn. One is it's based on a specific protocol, but the other is it's actually moving it online and in real time. That for me is the bigger thing. The fact that we're trying to do this online, shifting it so that we get deep human interactions online.
I think I put a note in the chat about the fractal nature of this, that it's a bit of a deep order fractal response to the fracturing of communication in the asynchronic world of Twitter and Google and so forth. I think that's a very interesting point.
A very important point, and I actually like to take it back to the comments on harmony and love, because those only become significant if you can acknowledge the way that difference and diversity and complexity are a real problem nowadays. The proliferation of enemy images is vast. And I think unless one is willing to call the degree of violence going on in all these systems by their name, then we're not going to really appreciate what harmony and love are about.
Okay, again, I'll shift our focus to the next working title. I think it's very relevant that we share these remarks and take note of those. Let's move on to working title 8, Collaborative Citizenship. I'll zoom in a little bit more. Some are a bit small. There we go.
It's got a lot of connection with, I think, number 4, doesn't it? It's very similar. I think it was number 4, same sort of thing, cooperation.
Yes, what struck me in this one is the emphasis on civil citizens and civility. Citizens, yeah. There's a bit more emphasis on the societal embedded, the embeddedness in society, I guess.
The point I was making, my contribution to this one was about that the way local practices are undertaken would benefit from reorganization to accommodate the kind of crises that we're going through. So the easiest to point to is schooling, for example, and how you want a curriculum which can cope with working from home or working from school or working on projects and the rest. And I think most schools probably don't have an architecture that easily is responsive to that, and that would just be one example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can I just point out that I tried to put my post-it note as close to make a difference, we need to make and not talk, as I could, because I was commenting on the way that the far right says that it wants to get things done, like getting Brexit done, and that this is part of the attack on democracy, that democracy is just talk, and that we've got to go away from slow talk to getting things done. So one has to be wary of, I think, too ready a claim on making and not talking.
Mm.
Okay. Let's move on to the next. Let's see, zoom out a little bit. Here we go. Working title 9. Oh, public relations, it's called. Let's see if I can.
Can I interrupt just very briefly? I thought this session was starting at noon my time, but it looks like it's been going on for some time. Is that correct? Did I get my time screwed up?
Yes, it started at 11.
Oh my.
Eastern.
I'm sorry. Okay, I just got here at a couple of minutes to 12. All right, sorry.
Well, good to have you here. We're looking at the clusters or the groupings that have emerged from the contributions of the statements of importance, and we're now at group number 9.
Also confused because I thought this session was to do the statements of importance.
No, actually, those have already been contributed, and we are now looking at the initial grouping.
Okay, so I have everything screwed up. Sorry.
So if you don't mind, I will continue. Let's catch up later when we have time for that. Okay.
Could I just ask, are we supposed to be doing this with the thought in mind that we might like to join a group discussing this? Is that the idea?
Well, that is a thought you can have with that. The thing right now is that we have a shared impression of what has been generated and the grouping that has emerged. We will then explore those groupings a bit more. And from that, then we will move on to the lottery to assign people to struts once the groups have been turned. Once we've reached 12 groups with an appropriate title.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes. Okay. So, are there any responses to the working title number 9, public relations? Sorry.
Yeah. Could I just say? My one relating to public service leadership was about quite a lot more than public relations. Mm-hmm. It's very much about governance at the current time, and how much there is a need and a demand for people to learn to work together more effectively. So it's giving skills to the public sector. So the title of public relations doesn't seem quite right to me. Mm-hmm. Or mm-hmm. Maybe that post-it belongs somewhere else. I don't know, but
it may be a bit dominated a bit by this one in the middle here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the rest, I mean, it feels to me as though that one on public service leadership belongs more in one of the social groups that we've just looked at, the society type groups that we've just looked at potentially.
Yeah, there's also one coming up actually that would be skipping ahead a little bit, but there's one about storytelling. Which let's see, where that one go.
But WT9 is much more about communicating with the public.
Right. There have been some updates that I'm not entirely aware of. Oh, well, hold on. It's changing minds, moving to action. Okay.
But also go in the citizenship one. I mean, it's an important leadership is an important thing, and of course, leadership is likely to impact a fair number of these.
So knowing that there is already there are other groups that are more related to communication, maybe we can shift the emphasis here a little bit more, indeed, towards leadership, or what are the suggestions?
Management.
That could be disseminations, maybe a better word, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the author should weigh in here because there's a huge difference between leadership and management.
Yeah, yeah. Does anyone who recognize their own sticky here? I can, of course, again, see who has done what. This one is by Marta.
That was mine. Yes,
Martin.
It's a little bit Peter Drucker's message that the crisis we are facing are because things are undermanaged. It's not because they're underfinanced or other reasons, but people do things differently. And this is maybe the area where we really can make a change. And the core question here is how to get the message out to the people who have to know about this, that there is a science and there are methods and tools available, proven, not well known yet, but available and robust.
Right, so this is indeed much more about dissemination then.
I guess, yes.
I can support that. I am the yellow one, and I worked like 3 years only on this. And for me, it's, I'm referring more or less indirectly to the matter of fact that for the first time in the history of syntegration, there's been a huge publicity boost by a CEO coming out, head of 6,000 people organization, and saying that the syntegration was central to 5-year transformation program. This has never happened before. This is a historical moment in the history of Malik and the history of the syntegration, in my eyes, in terms of real impact in society. And events like this is, for me, otherwise we will not have this, have any, this is the key in my view.
Actually, I know that there is a cluster coming up really related to storytelling. It was
12.
Yeah, there is one. It's more on the right. Yeah, it's labeled now, changing minds, moving to action.
That's about storytelling and public relations.
Yeah, this one is much more about cases, stories, narrative, and all those marketing script, it says even there. So I would actually think that Jens's yellow sticky better belongs there.
Yeah.
Taking from what you just said, Jens, I will move it there. And then I think public relations is much more about, well, perhaps dissemination more as a strategy or a plan or an idea of what needs dissemination and how does it need to be disseminated. Would it be more of that nature?
Yeah, I just want to say a note about my sticky note, which is about a platform, but more than a platform, it's about the technological instruments, the ICTs we are going to use for all of this, because we are all actually using the Google and Facebook and all these Twitter and all these, which are privately managed, and we have to really get the technology, use the technology for good and for our purposes and for and not to make somebody richer, but let us be richer also with the technology. So I don't know where to put that, because that was like an important thing. I don't see the technology anywhere, and I think that technology is a big enabler for us to really move on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. Public relations is not really labeling this group properly right now. I propose for now, because I hear your technology remark. I think there's another group here to the right about information management, etc., that could also have a technology dimension. I propose for working title 9 that we just label it dissemination for now. If that's okay. So Maya, if you would Yeah.
I would like to strongly oppose the use of the word dissemination.
Okay.
Because
Do
it's
you have an alternative?
unidirectional. I do. Marshall McLuhan.
Just Marshall McLuhan?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
we'll
it
put that in.
kind of
That's okay.
captures a little bit. Dissemination is really unidirectional, and I think it suggests sort of.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I hear you. Yeah. I'm fine with Marshall McLuhan as long as we together now witness that this label is put in place and what it might
Or
mean.
the medium is the message somehow, something like that.
Massage. Yeah.
Massage. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So Maya, if you will, please update that. We'll turn it into the Marshall McLuhan. It's a creative title. WT10, information management, only 3. And I'm reminded by Angela, we need to speed up a little bit. So I'll be increasing the pace a little bit in order to meet the schedule.
Let me throw in a point here. A couple of us are working on basically it's a cyber SYN for the world.
Barry, you are not quite audible, so you need to please speak a bit clearer into your mic.
It's a small group of us are working on what is essentially a cyber SYN for the world, focusing initially on rivers. I think that probably should go here.
Are you suggesting to add something?
Yes.
Yeah, because Barry didn't manage to make his statements.
Yeah.
Did you get what Barry said, Stefan?
Well, hardly. Maybe if Barry, if you can put it into the chat box, then perhaps Maya or Andrea can add a sticky on your behalf.
I think what Barry was saying, if I can try and repeat it, is that a group of which Barry is involved is looking at a World Cyber SYN project, initially starting on rivers.
Yes.
And maybe that should go in here. Is that right, Barry?
Yes, I did hear that, but if you put it in writing, please, in the chat box, then Maya and Andrea can add a sticky on your behalf. I think that for now is the most convenient route. Okay? Let's see, any other remarks about information management here?
That is also the big pink one is actually also about communication and stories. Better share learnings from applications. It's about that.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm the author of this one with the learning from applications. I think that should be about applying things and learning from applications. So we have a lot of theoretical discussions on models and methods and so on, but not so many really good discussions about applications and the problems of applications and how the hurdles have been overcome and so on. And that kind of discussion, I think, needs to be done. Information management is okay for me as a title.
So the emphasis of yours is not actually about sharing, but actually about getting a set of information about applications.
No, it's about the common sharing, the common evolution of knowledge, but applied knowledge.
Okay, I heard, Martin, that you are okay with that title for now, since you are one of the 3 represented there. If there are no additional remarks, I would like to continue to WT10 11. Sorry.
I just wanted to add something about this information. That is really growing on the world, and how are we going to assure that we have the quality of information and to get into that, because it's really a big problem, this information. So it's
so maybe indeed rather than just manage, or an important aspect of the management is fighting misinformation, or
no, it's a part of it, because it's a quality. I mean, I don't know, it I just wanted to
thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. Okay, here we have communicating with general society, WT11.
Well, I just love that. Develop a colloquial systems language that the average manager and politician can understand. What a brilliant idea. Just basic concepts that we've got that we know about 5 parts of the Bible systems, but which don't make sense to the ordinary person.
I think that's a compliment directly for Leonie there.
Well, that's fine.
Yeah, well.
And the title seems to be a bit misleading.
Mm-hmm.
Not about just easier understanding or easier communication.
Yeah.
Easier communication, understandability, things like that.
What about improving understandability and communication?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sense, yeah. It's broad, but it's directional. Maybe Andrea, you can would like to update that. So improving understandability and communication for WT11. Okay, moving on.
So just quickly before you move on, there's several of these about influence, communicating and capturing knowledge, which for me are all about creating a narrative of what we are doing and a story. And that, for me, that's a viable narrative. It has to be separate sections that link together through cohesion and coherence and allow the system to anticipate. And all of those come together, for me, under one section.
And that is the narrative.
And that's creating a narrative that captures knowledge, that needs to be put into a language, a story that people understand. So it seems to me that somewhere there needs to be a section on narrative.
Well, Jonathan, your timing is excellent. I think the WT12, where we are now, even though it's called Changing Minds, Moving to Action, you will see that the comments that are in, or the SIs that are in here, are very much related to narrative.
Gotcha.
Hope that's legible for everyone. I can maybe squeeze that in a bit more.
I'm not quite sure what this seems to be a split here. Either are we talking about syntegration, which some of them are we talking about cybernetics?
Yeah, stories about what?
A bit of a difference. I mean, I think we've got to change minds to thinking cybernetically. I agree entirely, and have good stories. I agree. But a few of these seem to be talking about integration, which is different.
Yes, as most of us are members of Metaforum, I would suggest that we understand this as applications success from the application of managerial cybernetics, as a start at least.
Yeah. I would like to see stories from painting, from music, from drama, from performance arts, not just from science or from philosophy. I think good stories have got to relate to people and their normal lives.
Yeah, my comment about testimony was related to that. Is that trying to qualify what I was thinking about it was a good story, and this was in response to a comment about less talk and more action, because in my way of thinking about this, a good conveyance of testimony is actually part of a constructivist way of thinking about you're actually building understandings, which is perhaps equally as viable as actually literal making. But I would also agree with the points about too much loose talk, which you know, you want plenty of applied activity, and that's central to understanding.
Okay, I think for now, if we take note of the title as it currently is and what is inside here, what people have shared as remarks, that should be sufficient for now. And when we have discussions in that group, please provide a more fitting title at that time. So here we have number 13, Practical Philosophy, it's called as a working title.
I ended up with 2 in here. I don't know how, because it wasn't something I was thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought about whether or not to ask to be moved, but I'm not inclined to. I think it's the motivation behind both of the interventions of mine that are here is related to ethics and reflection and the relationship between ethics and epistemology. So one of the divorces executed by liberal capitalism was this separation, and modern science is this separation of ethics and epistemology, of the real and the right. And I guess both of those are somehow bound up for me in this question of how do we cope with bringing those things back together dialectically, because they can't continue to be separate. But the morality one was a bit more about differentiated relational structures. So I'm not quite sure if it fits there or not.
I think a better title would be the black square there. What does it mean to be human? I think that's a better title for the work, the 13, rather than practical philosophy. It's not practical philosophy.
What do you think, Catherine?
Humanist. What's it mean to be human?
I would say, what does it mean to be humane, perhaps?
Oh, humane, yeah, okay. All right,
Okay.
yeah.
Which,
yeah.
because there's a lot of humans who aren't humane.
Okay, humane, yeah.
What does it mean to be humane?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
With that, we'll move on to the next one. Thank you. So project understanding and management. Sure.
One thing we might, with that, with changing it to what does it mean to be humane, Stefan, would just be, that's for me also very bound up with Bateson and second orders cybernetics. So perhaps that could be like a secondary tag there.
As a secondary tag, okay. I see Maya adding Bateson as a between brackets there. Is that a helpful reminder?
Well, I would add plus Bateson. So not
plus,
plus Bateson.
Plus Bateson. Okay. So not between brackets, but plus Bateson. Okay, there you go.
Actually, well, personally, I like what does it mean to be human, because it implies that that there's certain forms of conduct that aren't human.
So maybe
it's more just being an animal, for example.
Perhaps the E in humane can be between brackets, and then we plus the Bateson. And then we
brackets on the E and plus Bateson. I can live with that.
Okay, great.
I don't know, Hugh, can you live with that for the moment?
It's fine by me. I mean, I understand these are tentative titles, I think, anyway, aren't they?
Yes, they are tentative.
Absolutely.
Yes. But we're trying to, remind ourselves of the discussions we've had by improving the titles. Yeah, so, okay, here we have project understanding and management.
Just quickly on the last one, I just wanted to remind people about Vina, the human use of human beings.
Just not structural coupling.
again, 2 of these notes are mine. And
which ones were those?
The 2 yellow ones, which are coupled here, I would have put them in 4. No, the darker yellow ones.
Darker yellow ones, these ones. Well, since they belong to you, I think you are in charge of where they go. So since you give such clear instruction of where they should belong, I will process that immediately.
Are they actually a single statement of importance, John, spread across 2 notes?
Well, unfortunately, they were. I was cheating.
Yeah. Because the therefore follows on from the people need to.
Okay.
So
they have to be one above the other.
One above the other. Okay.
Or as you find like that.
Ah, yeah. Okay. They go together like that. Okay. Good. So that's resolved. Project. Okay, it's a bit tighter.
I don't really understand the title.
No, me neither. Maybe I don't know who in the team created the title. Maybe can give a clarification.
Is project or project?
I assume the latter, but maybe one of the people in the organizing team that created this title can comment. Because if there's no comment, perhaps we can come up with a better one. Or there were a few, and this might be one, that contain quite a bit of floaters. Let's
What
say.
about empowerment? As a title? Empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
Empowerment of local actors.
I'm pretty uncomfortable with the idea of with the concept of empowerment. It suggests that someone has the power to give to people.
Mm-hmm.
I was responsible for the dark green.
All right. So as an alternative to empowerment, better reflecting your intent, what would you suggest as an alternative?
Taking power.
Taking power. Mm-hmm.
Perhaps exercising power.
Exercising power, yeah.
Where I always
yeah
as well, that there's a huge amount of power moving around, and a part of the problem is that because it's not channeled in biologically viable ways, it's exploited, or virtuously biologically viable ways, it's exploited in non-virtuous biologically viable ways, because punching someone in the face is a very effective way to control them.
I wouldn't be happy with the use of the word power or taking power, because everybody feels they have a right to take power. Empowerment's not about somebody giving you empowerment. It's about the ability to make mistakes without being blamed for it. So that people trust you to do what you have to do. It's not really about power, it's about trust. So empowerment is a good word.
To avoid getting caught up in too much of the semantics, I think what I see, so I was the purple one doing evolution, which is a big topic for me. It's something I feel very strongly about. And I think it comes into this question of realization or articulation. So perhaps something, taking into account what Jane and Jonathan have said, something more about realization of potential, or exercise of potential and self-determination. These are things that I see wrapped up in this.
I wrote the sticky with the 2 comments on it, the yellow one in the top right corner. And I was basically just quoting from Brain of the Firm, chapter 20, the final chapter, and feeling that the lessons of crisis management from there needed to be part of this discussion. And so that's what informed my sticky. It does have to do with how do you preserve what you've created in a time of crisis when there are multiple actors present working in multiple directions. I mean, in the chapter itself, there's a lot about emergent situations in which there are conflicting narratives about it, and whoever manages to control the narrative controls the situation. So that's what informed my sticky. It seems like something that folds that complex idea into the title would be good. I'm at a loss.
Is this about designing systems, designing for change, designing for society?
I think it's about anticipating somehow. The designing is part of the natural characteristic of the human being. We are constantly in that process, consciously or unconsciously, that we're always structuring. But I don't know, Jane was going to say something probably much more interesting.
So maybe enabling exertion of power, yeah. I don't know. I'm struggling as well. I can't resolve it entirely. So maybe we can just as a placeholder put in power dynamics. What about that? Just as a placeholder working title. Any
Doesn't
objections?
that miss out the green one, which is talking about anticipation, which is a key thing. That's not power dynamics.
No, okay. I'm struggling. Sorry, I shouldn't have done that.
No, I think it's a valiant effort.
What about enabling progress?
It's about solution dynamics.
Or enabling progress?
But progress is tricky. I sort of progress is about from where to here. But without, I would keep dynamics in there.
Okay, dynamics. We got dynamics.
Yeah, could we put something like
I like the word anticipation.
Could we focus on change? Because power is about making change happen, isn't it?
Not always. It can be about stopping change from happening.
Oh, okay. It's about change, though. In some way, it's about whether things change or they don't change. It's power is a kind of an explanation, but not a very good explanation of why things change.
Or adaptivity,
capability, dynamics of capability,
dynamics of change.
Isn't
dynamics
that
of change?
Isn't that the ability to adapt?
Yeah.
Okay, let's add that one and
well done.
Yeah, that'll do.
And ability to adapt. Let's leave it with that. Yeah, if we add that. Okay. Moving on to number 15. Let's see if I can find that. Where is that? Oh, here. Ooh, anthropological considerations.
I would have said the blue post-it note would go in the previous one rather well.
See who wrote that one.
That was me.
Jonathan, yeah.
Well, the purple sticker is certainly very, very currently relevant, isn't it? Very currently relevant.
Catherine, yeah.
Post-colonial attitudes. Very, very relevant. Should be discussed.
Yeah, but it seems that it can go to the 13 where it says, what does it mean to be human? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it really needs to, I mean, it sort of lives as a bridge between, at least in my thinking, for whatever that matters. There's sort of as a bridge between what you're saying, Martha, and war. And it's a bit related to the situation in the United States at the moment, not to bring in the politics of it, but to talk about it in terms of George Floyd. I mean, George Floyd is a very symbolic entity, and the Reverend of the Ebenezer Baptist Church has just been elected as a senator. And this is a part of the blood on the hands of the American capitalists who have their riches based on slavery. And the reality is that the wealth in Europe is also bloodied with the same, just it's managed to wash it off a bit over time. But the vestiges are still there, and I think that they're structural. So I think it exists as an entity in itself. I'm not sure where, but I think it's more than just what it means to be human or humane. I don't know. It wasn't very helpful, I'm sorry.
The reason I put that there is because you'll come across a problem that groups, tribes, if you want to put it that way, reach a belief system that they believe to be true. And no matter what you say, and they create a narrative that encompasses that belief and the facts that they want to believe, or the facts how they want to believe them. And that'll be the same for us as it will be as a tribe of cyberneticians creating this. So when we go out to make change, what you haven't got in here is, let me just guess, put your hands up if you're a Trump supporter, but you need to bring a couple of Trump supporters into this group. And then you need to create a solution that encompasses everybody. And that's the problem of mankind, to be honest.
If you're going to take away from people the group identities that reinforce their egos, then you do have to start doing things like empowering them. Apologize for using that word, but I can't think of a better one. So, you know, this is very much part of the whole dynamics of change.
Yes, I'd fundamentally agree with that. And you have to do that in a way that doesn't take away people's identities, but grows them. So I think the Arabs have a lovely saying, it's me against my brother, it's me and my brother against the village, or the cousins, it's me and my brother and the cousins against the village. All of that, you actually become part of bigger and bigger groups, and they have to be cohesive. So whatever you do, whenever you solve it, you have to encompass bigger and bigger ideas.
Yeah, I mean, this may or may not be relevant, but I think the real goal here, jumping into the weeds, is not to try to change minds, but to get people to recognize parts of their minds so they can shift their identity from, say, being paternalistic to being poor, so they can work together with poor people instead of just authoritarians. So I think the job is easier than we think if we don't make the mistake of thinking we're going to recreate people's minds.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't think you can recreate people's minds. You have to assimilate and accommodate their ideas into bigger ideas.
Looking at the clock, we do need to move on to the other working titles. Is there, for this point, is it worthwhile to keep this grouping intact? Or if so, should we perhaps update the title or leave it for now and it can be updated?
I think it could go under dynamics of change on 3, I think. Yeah. Merge the two together.
Yeah, the one what it is to be human, it fits with as well, I think. So
I think there may be a level which is between, it's not to do just with being human, because human is biological. It's not just to do with the dynamics of communication in groups. It's to do with whole societies. And what somebody was just saying now about latching on to certain items, articles of faith, if you like, about what the world is like. So it's a kind of level of filter, which is unique to this group, which isn't quite the same as the other groups, I think.
Yeah, I hope we keep it, because it's a meta view that is easy to ignore at our peril.
I would suggest to change it just a tiny little bit in terms of, and it stays with anthropological considerations, because it was actually the first work of Levi Strauss, which is boundaries. And to a certain degree, one of the most fundamental characteristics of being human is the construction and management and negotiation of boundaries. And I think one of the big problems that we confront when we're trying to be humanistic is this idea that there shouldn't be any boundaries, which is completely incompatible with everything we know about how systems function. So I would add sort of /boundaries and
thank you.
Maybe leave it there.
Yes, that's a very, thank you. That's a very clear alteration. So maybe Andrea, if you can add /boundaries to that to reflect the discussion we had, but we leave it intact. And we move on to the next one, because I'm trying to help us reach the finish line for 1/4 to the hour. Let's see if we can make that. WT16, systemic sources of global crises. It says here, I'll zoom in a bit more. Yeah.
Well, mine was a yellow sticker, and I think that the world hasn't got a system 4, and that's the problem.
I would agree with that. It doesn't have a system 4 that people are listening to. And I think Stafford talked a lot about that in Heart of Enterprise, where he said the operations managers, the day-to-day, tend to control everything.
Fundamental systemic source is the story that we have adopted about economy, about humans being separate from nature, that competition is dominant over cooperation. All that sort of story is the basic systemic source of a global crisis. Just the other day, my climate scientist collaborator said, until we face the fact that we humans have caused all of these problems, including the current pandemic, we will get nowhere. The systemic source of the global crisis.
Barry, maybe you want to add a remark in the chat so that we can reflect your contribution as we add to this group as well. Since you hadn't had the opportunity to contribute before, maybe you want to add one here via the chat.
Apologies again for how I missed a day.
That's okay. We're working with it now. So
I don't see how the pink and green really fit well in this grouping.
And I would suggest a / systemic sources and potential approaches to global crisis, so that we're not just focusing on the negative.
And approaches to deal with global crisis?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say solutions because that's, but yeah. And I just couldn't help myself. I think we only have a partial system 2 and a partial system 3 prime. There is no real meta system at the global level.
I think we have an excellent meta system. It's just totally destructive.
Okay. I'm going to shift our attention to the next one, which is number 17, the role of crises. And unfortunately, this very large one is not legible in that form. So that will need more further study on my row by yourself. Can maybe enlarge this one a little bit.
Oof.
I think the white one that never let a good crisis go to waste. I think that's the epitome of this word package.
Yeah, could be an alternative title for it.
I mean, if you look at any natural system, the crisis or the destruction of it is essential for its survival. Crisis is not abnormal. A crisis is a natural part of the process of surviving. And the important thing is to develop from the crisis. It's not the crisis is the problem, it's the problem of what happens after.
So maybe we can update the working title to never let a good crisis go to waste. It's a bit more provocative.
Well, actually, there's a semantic point here, but I think it's important. Conventionally, we tend to think of crisis as being like an event or the dramatic cause of something. But actually, technically, I think the crisis is more about the split or the change itself. So without the change, you haven't had the crisis, if you get my drift.
Mm-hmm. And how would that reflect in the title? I'm sorry, I'm trying to follow.
Well, the implication before was that it was all about the crisis was, was an antecedent to the development. But although the point was made that the crisis is necessary for development, it's the crisis is actually the change, or you could say the major transitions in change is what.
So you could argue a crisis is when something stops change from happening that should happen.
Yeah, that's a different meaning of crisis. I think that's a different. That's a completely different meaning.
Well, perhaps this ambiguity revolving around the word crisis is perhaps indicating that this is as it is, a fitting working title for now for further discussion. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because then, for the purpose of this part of the session, I think then we can maybe look at the last one, which is it doesn't even have a boundary yet. It's called cybernetics, but it's also a bit, I think, maybe the miscellaneous section, and it also brings us full circle to the part where we started. Let's start here, it says. So
sorry, I was struggling to find my mouse pointer. Can I just quickly make a remark about the previous one?
Sure. Yeah, okay.
The note about mortality, I'm not sure where it belongs, but I wrote that. I didn't think it would. This wouldn't have been where I'd have put it. That doesn't mean I'm sure where it should go.
That's this one. We are all mortal.
Yes, I think that I would have associated that again with the stuff in 4, but I don't have strong feelings about it.
Mm-hmm. And this is yours, right?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like with the others, I can move it there, and it's in 4, you say. Yeah, I'll put it there. Okay. I'll tidy that up shortly, but let's have a look at number 18 together first. Currently called cybernetics only.
The blue one, I would say, can go with a collaboration citizenship. I would say I'm not the owner of it, but
it was created by Leon.
The reason I like part of that there is because of I think the homeostatic loops get left out of design way too often.
Mm-hmm.
Are you proposing for it to go to 16, is it?
No, I'm proposing that some version of it and duplicated, if you like, but needs to stay with cybernetics, because I see that's one of the weaknesses, is that we're all very good at talking about 5 things at one recursion, but not so good about going across multiple recursions or dealing directly with the active principle, which are homeostats. So I really want
repetition.
I've added a duplicate to 16.
Yes, please.
Yeah. It's acting up a little. There we go. I think, let's see, Mark, are these yours? I think they are, right? Yeah, Mark Pearson. Yeah.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I basically I tried to put in the things that I see preventing us from routinely exercising the full power of Beer's thinking.
So, how do you feel about the title for the grouping currently, cybernetics?
I typed it there, so I guess I'm okay with it, but I also don't mind you changing it.
No, okay, but if it's an adequate reflection for now, then we can leave it in. I'll just add the boundary here since it was not there yet. Okay, good. I think with that, we have come full circle on visiting all the working titles. It took a bit of time. I hope it felt relevant for all. It does require a bit of patience, I realize. But with that, we now have identified 18 groupings, potentially clusters. So maybe Angela, I'm looking for you on screen, if I can find you.
Yeah, I'm here, yes.
Oh, there you are. Yes. Ah, all right. I saw an empty screen for John, but now you spoke up. Now I see where you are. So I'll stop the screen share and give the speaking baton back to you.
Right. So we now have an agenda. We now have the agenda for the next hour. Is it 1 hour, no?
Yep, 3:20.
So we have 20 minutes meetings. We have the breakout rooms now. We have the facilitators for each breakout room. So what we are going to do is I'm going to share in the chat the names of the groups and the facilitators. And I guess that we will need a 10 minutes break just to stretch our legs and come back.
I think so.
I'm going to be cruel and ask you to do it in 7 minutes, the break, so that we can stick to the agenda. Or no, let's do it the 10 minutes. So we will start at 6:05, okay? 6:05. In 10 minutes, we will open the first breakout rooms. I will send right now in the chat the agenda, so everybody can have the
we should check it first.
Okay. So John said we should check it first. So we'll see you here in 10 minutes, and you will have in the chat the names of the breakout rooms. Actually, the breakout rooms are going to be named with the names that we have decided collectively now. So you can just come in, decide where you want to go. There will be a facilitator in each breakout room. And as I said before, you can pop in and out. You can stay if you get engaged in the conversation, or you can go to another breakout room and contribute. Okay, so that's the agenda for the next hour. Just going backwards and forwards between the first 9 breakout rooms. We'll do that for an hour. And tomorrow we will start with the other 9 breakout rooms. Okay, so that's the agenda for today.
And Angela, David is asking, it's going to be in this Zoom space that we're in at the moment. We're not moving to another environment.
No, it's the same Zoom space, and there will be breakout rooms that you need just to look in your screen, the breakout rooms, and you will see the names of the breakout rooms. You can just pop in and out as many times as you wish. Yeah.
Angela, could you